Hello,
Welcome everybody.
hello, everyone. We are so excited to be here, and I was just educating Saket on something. And it's that the under 35 crowd has a phobia of budgeting, or many of the under 35 crowd
Yeah.
have a phobia of budgeting.
Yeah, I think it's a very budgeting in its sense is a very scary term because budgeting means you're trying to it's actually before we go there, I'll tell a story which will
Mhm.
basically cover the same exact thing because I understand what they're going through. A friend of mine when I was in college, it was probably 96. No, it's probably when I started working the first job, 98, 99. I'm dating myself. He asked me a question. This guy was super philosophical, right? Always thinking about things and himself. He asked me a question, and I was happy go lucky. I took life as it went. There was no plan for my life. I'm like, you know what? Every day is a different day. And so far, life hasn't failed me. So why would it? That's how I lived my life. And I've perfectly fine with that life. So he asked me a question one day. He's like, why don't you pause and think about you? Oh, that's a very interesting question. Why do I need to? And we started going back and forth, back and forth. And eventually, after like probably 2, 3 hours of conversation, and there was alcohol involved, of course. After 2, 3 hours of conversation, what we came up to were like, I don't want to know what I don't want to know. I'm perfectly fine. At least at that point, I was perfectly fine not knowing my dark side. Because once I knew my dark side, I'll have to go fix it. I can't live with knowing that I have a dark side, or at least not trying to fix it. Right? I'm like, I don't
Mhm.
want. I don't have the time to fix myself. Let me just go. Let me just go make money. I just started working and all that stuff. And the reason I'm telling this story is I have a feeling a lot of the folks that you mentioned, and of course we're generalizing the statement, but because there may be other people who are very diligent about their budgets. So regardless of the age you are, if you're not budgeting because you're afraid of your dark side of what your own financial spending habits, I understand who you are because I used to be that person in terms of
Mhm.
introspection, right? And I can tell you the journey of knowing areas that need your attention, while painful, is very, very fruitful, right? And so I would say that watch this show. If you're listening live, great. If you're listening to it offline, take that perspective that knowing what you need to fix does not mean you have to fix it. Does not. First of all, I'm giving you the freedom of choice, saying I know this sucks, my financial habits, or I love my financial habits. Don't pass judgment on them, right? And that's also true for knowing yourself when you're trying to ask these hard questions of, am I happy with my life? Am I happy? Did I have a productive last hour, last day, last week, last month, last year, however far you want to go back? Um, these questions are just for you to know where you are. Does not mean you have to fix anything. I'm never going to be telling anybody saying, "Hey, you know what? You've figured out what's not working. Now let's go fix it." That's your choice. But at least you have a choice. Right now, you're not giving yourself the permission because you don't want to look in the past, because you don't want to look into yourself, because you don't want to look into your finances. That ignorance is bliss. Ignorance is never bliss. Ignorance is never bliss. That's an understatement. I have no idea who said that, but ignorance is bliss till you suffer the wrath of that ignorance. At some point, it's going to bite you in the butt because what
Mhm.
you don't know is going to hurt you. And especially if you're trying to know and you don't know, that's one thing. At least you can live with the consequence. That I tried. But if you're just sitting in a fancy world saying, "Let me not even think about it," because if I don't think about it, things are going to disappear. That's not going to happen, right? A mouse closing its eyes because a cat appeared in front of him does not make the cat disappear. Simple statement. But
Mhm.
that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to say the event or the consequence will disappear if we keep our eyes closed. So it won't.
Exactly. And there's so many different philosophies on budgeting too. And I think that's part of the overwhelm with budgeting is everybody has, I do it this way. I'm not sure if you've heard of an envelope method. I do it down to dollar and cents. I round my figures. It can be so overwhelming. What's your budgeting style?
So I think let's talk about the definition of the word. I'm a big proponent of using the words
Yeah.
once you understand the meaning. right? So what does
Mhm.
budget mean to you? That's a question you have to ask yourself. And why you're budgeting. Are you budgeting because you heard Dave Ramsey or Saket or Susie? I'm not putting myself in that at that pedestal. Those
Oh,
guys
no,
are
he's not trying to make himself associated with that
no.
crew, but it
I'm
just
actually
felt
not at all.
convenient verbally.
Thank you. I'm not. But I'm just saying, who are you listening to
Mhm,
by the word budget? So first of all, you have to, like we always talk about it. You have to understand: is it the external noise, or is it the internal calling, right? If it's the external noise, I would say take all the inputs. That's perfectly fine. But then sit down and define what is your definition of budget, right? Budget all essentially means is using your resources wisely, whatever resources you have. If you have a 1 cent or if you have $1 million, does not matter. How are you going to use that resource to the biggest advantage you can give yourself to? That's
mhm.
all budgeting is, right?
Right.
Now, if you have $1 million, counting cents does not make much sense from my perspective, right? Because you have to figure out where is the value for your time.
Mhm,
To count each and every cent every single day is going to take time, right? And if you are making $2 a day, that's a very different approach versus if you're, let's say, an hour basis. If you're making $10 an hour versus you're making $5,000 an hour, counting a cent every single day, if it's going to take you 2 hours or half an hour, whatever, that's a lost revenue. So to
mhm.
save 1 cent, now you're losing out on $2,000,
And
right?
another term for that is opportunity cost, which I think is
Correct.
so good
Very
to look
important.
into.
So I think what so you have to figure out where you are in your life and what does budgeting mean to you, right? Have
Mhm.
your own definition. And you don't have to get published, so you don't have to share the definition with anyone.
Right.
Whatever definition, with how crude that is, how raw that is, it doesn't matter. And then from there, you look at thing in perspective by adding in your hourly rate. Now, most people don't know what their hourly rate is, right? So before you actually do budgeting, figure out your hourly rate. I would say I would invite you to do that before you do budgeting. And here's the reason why. You may realize that you're getting paid $100,000, or let's say I'm rounding that number. Some may be making more, some may be making less. It's okay. Doesn't matter. And you're working $1,000, 1,000 hours a year. Let's say, hypothetically, that's the assumption you're falling in. You calculate your hourly rate here. That's $1,000 an hour, right? Or $100 an hour. Sorry. So if you're making $100,000 and you're making $100 an hour by working $1,000 an hour, now you have to figure out: do I need to budget in the increments of hundreds? Because that's you're making $100 an hour, right? And you are the true. I give you full freedom to determine what denomination do you want to budget in, right? But if you're making $100 an hour and it's going to take you an hour a day to save 50 cents, that's a question you need to ask. Again, I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but the question you need to ask is, can I spend that extra hour to make one more $100?
Mhm,
Right? And this is true for companies. This is true for individuals.
mhm.
Cutting down expenses is not where I want you to focus. I never want you to focus on to cutting expenses, because there's only so many expenses you can cut. I would rather focusing on how do I make that extra $100, make it to 10,000, make it to 100,000, make it to 500,000 an hour. I don't care, because the upper limit is unlimited, right? I think somebody, and I don't know the details of it, but they said Bill Gates, if he drops in $1,000, he's not gonna bend down and pick that $1,000 because he just lost $2 million of picking that money. Same.
Mhm.
Maybe that story is true. Maybe it's not true. I don't know. But that's exactly the concept we're trying to talk. I'm trying to talk to you about is that budgeting has to be done to an extent that you want to spend time budgeting. Budgeting may be your passion. I hope not, but it may be your
Maybe
passion,
there is somebody
right?
out here that loves it though, and if it is,
Loves
good
it.
for you. We're proud of you.
Perfect. So then do it, right? Do it to 0.001 cent. I don't care, right? If
Mhm.
that's the reason you're doing it, because not everything is done for financial reasons. If you get there and if it makes you feel comfortable, continue doing that.
If
Perfect.
it gives you baseline safety, all that's important.
All that's important. But on the flip side, also look at the amount of time I'm spending budgeting what could I have made money on, right?
Mhm.
And that same thing goes to, I'm cutting my own lawn because I want to save $25, $50 an hour.
Mhm.
Your hour is way more valuable than you can imagine, right?
Mhm.
And that's anyone I coach, I tell them the same exact thing. Carve out the areas of your life that you can delegate today, not tomorrow, right? If it's and there was a guy that I was coaching. I won't give the name away, but he was making almost 300-400K, and every weekend he would spend 2 hours cutting his lawn.
Mhm.
And he would say that I need to save money on I need to save money because I need to do X, Y, and Z. I'm like, that's fine. Let's just talk about that specific thing. Do you think you can do it? You can create an online course that can give you $5,000 a month of income today if you wanted to? Is that,
Mhm.
oh, hell yeah, why not? I'm like, then why are you saving $50 an hour?
Mhm.
Question, right? He's like, I never thought about that. I'm like, because you have never thought about value for your time. When
Mhm.
budgeting, all the budgeting pundits, they're not talking explicitly about value for your time. If you want to budget something, that's what I want you to budget at the 5 second limit. Right? Every 5 to 15 second interval is your time being spent productively.
Mhm.
That I want you to be as granular as you can. Because if you're wasting a second of your life not doing something productive with it, you're not gonna get that time back.
Mhm.
Dollar you can earn back at a much better proportion, right? So if you were to spend $50 and you're gaining back 2 hours of your life, what are you gonna do with the 2 hours? Otherwise, if you're just gonna sleep, and that's okay too. Again, no judgment. I'm saying just sleep because I love sleep. But if you're just gonna sleep for 2 more hours because you're just feeling lazy, not because you have a health condition, you're just feeling lazy because you have an extra time, you just flip on a Netflix series and you sleep for 2, 3 hours. While it's healthy for some time, but if that becomes a pattern consistently, now you're not using your time well, right?
Mhm.
So I always look at budgeting in terms of not financial budgeting. It's important to a certain extent, right? I don't obsess over where every single penny is going. Not because I'm sitting, I've crossed a chasm. That's not the reason for that. Is because there's no what value is tracking of every single penny going to add to me? Zero value. Zero.
Mhm.
But what
Absolutely.
value is going to track me, is going to add to me to track every single second of my life? Immensely. I mean, you guys know that. Hopefully, you've listened. I don't know if you're a repeat listener or not. I've spent a lot. My wife is going full time to school. I only have 4 to 5 hours a day right now to do anything outside of my family. For me, every single second right now is counting. We started getting on this our live session. Usually, we'll catch up for like 20 minutes before we go live. I told Brooke I have a hard stop because I got to go pick my girls. So I love talking to you, but we're gonna go live today, right? So we didn't have much time to
Exactly.
catch
And
up.
I think they're at horse riding camp, aren't they?
Horse riding camp, yeah.
And I want to bring up a point that relates to that. We are in no way endorsing hustle culture. I used to be involved in hustle culture. It's really destructive. It hurts the nervous system, it hurts the body. Do not engage in hustle culture to the point that you are feeling ill, you are chronically fatigued, you are making yourself mentally, emotionally, or spiritually sick. That is not normal. And I do actually watch TV every evening, and I consider myself very successful. I
Yeah,
actually love to clean my own home because it's a real passion for me. So that does not,
correct.
when we're talking about this, it's more of something if you wish you were doing something else. So if you are cutting your grass and you dislike it versus I love to mop, which is a real thing for me. I get a lot of creative ideas when I mop. So make distinctions based on this in your own life in your own way.
Thank you for saying that, Brooke, because I think you have my neighbors ask me all the time. This one neighbor asked me, he's like, even if it cost me, even if you pay me $1 million, I'll still cut my own grass.
Yes, because for some people that's their
Because for him, it's a
creative
therapy.
energy.
It's a therapy for him, right? I'm like, that's
Mhm.
perfectly fine. If you're doing it for that reason, I can live with it. And who am I to judge anybody? I'm just
Yep.
saying, in my perspective, I can live with my logic can sustain that. But if
Mhm.
somebody is saying that I make $200,000 and I'm cutting my grass to save 25, $50 a month, that's what always want to challenge. I'm okay with that too,
Mhm,
because it's not my money, it's not my time, it's not my life, it's their life. But I like to challenge that, because are you really
mhm,
saving money by saving $50? I think you're thinking small, and I want you to think big.
mhm.
I want you to think big, right? And when we are looking at acquiring companies, acquiring assets, that's exactly what we're saying. We're not focusing on cutting expenses. We will cut expenses. Given
Absolutely.
that's a fact. We will cut expenses. But is that the only reason I'm buying the company? No.
Mhm.
I'm buying the company because I can increase the top line and optimize the bottom line,
Yeah.
and optimize the expenses, right? So with your life, the budgeting plays the same exact role. You're
Mhm,
budgeting to understand what aspects of your life you're wasting, right?
mhm.
What aspects of your life have zero value in your life? Cutting the lawn, if you hate it, like me, even if I have to get it for free, I will never do it. You can
Oh my
pay me
goodness.
$2 billion, I would not cut my grass. I just
That's
hate it.
hysterical.
But doesn't mean it's I'm passing that judgment on to you. If you love it, great, do it. But the
Yeah.
value you have to figure out, what's the value? Value is
Mhm,
not always monetarily, right? If watching Netflix gives you peace, watch
mhm.
Netflix. But you watch Netflix for 24 hours, that may be unhealthy,
Right.
right? Have
It's
you
all in
right?
moderation
It's
and
all
using discernment.
correct. Correct. And you are the only one who can do that, right? Now, cutting subscription is another big pet peeve of me. That's mine. That's fine. You can
Cutting coffee is the big one as
cutting
well.
coffee. I'm like, why would you want to cut coffee if you love coffee? Why? I don't
Yeah. I
understand
mean,
that.
as
I don't
somebody who
understand the
doesn't drink
latte
coffee,
factor.
it's no big deal to me, but that's the big there's a meme that goes around the internet. You probably haven't seen it. But it says a $7 Starbucks per day equals I can't remember how much per year. And it's
Yeah.
really not that astronomical of an amount.
Even if it is, let's just hypothetically say, as I'm saying, is it's the value. If that
Mhm.
gives comfort to your soul, why would you want to cut it off?
You got to find a way to make that money if you need additional income.
If you
So,
want
how do
$7
you
a
make
coffee,
an
and if you
additional
want to,
$7 a day on
correct.
a course or a digital product or something of that nature?
And it's not, I know I'm saying it, but I hate creating digital courses. Book knows about it. But
Yeah, he
but
does.
I'm saying that you can easily make $10 a day. Easily. In this economy, with the infrastructure provided, you can easily make $10 a day. So if you're
Mhm,
spending $7 on a coffee, thinking about cutting coffee is one way to look at it. But I would
mhm,
encourage you to say, how can I make $10 so that now my coffee is being paid by that $10? And
mhm.
better yet, if you can create that $10 that doesn't need you, right?
Correct.
Passive courses, you could do a service offering, you could record a podcast, whatever you want to do. That options are unlimited, right?
Mhm.
And what I want you to do is, when you start thinking about creating your time, taking value of your time, is also the concept of leverage, right? But spending $50 on a lawn, we're using lawn mowing as an example. I'm not saying lawn mowing is
But
bad.
we're not in any way demonizing it. As
I'm not
somebody who lives on
demonizing it.
acreage,
I
we
hate
can't
it.
demonize it
And
here.
I'm using the strong word hate. I hate it. I don't get no pleasure
You
out
would
of
hate
lawn
my
cutting.
home.
I don't like cutting lawn. But that's me, right? So stay with me for that example. By paying somebody 10, 15, 20, 50, whatever it costs to mow your lawn, maybe 100, let's use around number $100 a month. By paying somebody, you're creating leverage in your life,
Mhm.
right? Now, what you do with that leverage is very important, because I don't want you to spend $100 on a lawn mowing service, if the time you're saving, an hour or two every month, if that's not adding value in your life, right? Let's
Mhm.
say you're spending time with your kids, right? That could be the value that you
Right.
didn't have two
Reading a
hours
book, it can really be
in the book.
anything.
Like this guy that I was talking to, he said, "My weekends are gone. I have a 2 acre lot. My weekends are gone mowing lawn, but I don't have time to spend with kids." I'm like, let's think about that. What you just said. You're choosing to save $50. You're valuing your $50 more, or $100 more, than choosing time to spend with the kids. What's wrong? Do you see a problem in that statement? I didn't say it.
Mhm.
The person said it. I'm like, I'm just repeating what you just told me. What do you see the gap here? He's like, you're right. I'm prioritizing the $50, $100 more than my time with the kids. I'm like, do you think you can make $50 more in life on a monthly basis? Maybe not today, 6 months from today, 2 months from today. Maybe not today. You don't know how to make that money today, but can you make it later? Right. So that's what I would say for budgeting. It's scary because people are thinking I need to track every single penny.
Mhm,
You can if you want to. The question I would ask you is what value is tracking penny going to give you?
mhm.
Figure out a
And
denomination.
if it's tracking it, it's only gonna give you stress. Because 'cause I'm gonna sound really crazy here when I say this. I actually don't do that. I really think in big numbers, big concepts, more like a big brushstroke. I don't really think about small things so much.
Yeah.
And some of my other friends, they really, really do. It's all a personality type, it's all a vision. Everyone is different. And if you're not sure about your budgeting style, talk to your friends, talk to your family, take what advice works for you and leave the rest. Because the rest is only going to stress you and it's only going to make you feel wrong or shameful or guilty or bad. And we want to avoid those emotions around
Yeah.
finance
Yeah.
as much as we possibly can.
Finance is not that hard. To be
No.
really, really, really honest, there's a reason why there's a scare exists among the finance industry because people want to make money off of that fear.
And it's
Right?
quite gate kept.
It is. So, for example, you can hire a bookkeeper to do your personal finances and pay them $50 a month or $60 a month, and they'll track every single penny. They will
Mhm.
on your personal finance. Forget about businesses; they can do it for business. For you can hire a personal CFO who's going to tell you your spending habits. But what's the need, right? What is the need for you to do that? If you can figure out, hey, you know what, I'm okay tracking at $100 denomination or $50 denomination or percentage wise denomination, I'm perfectly fine with that. Let the software do the job. I mean, there's so many budgeting softwares, or I shouldn't say budgeting, there's so many personal expenses software. You can pick your poison. Doesn't matter what you pick, right? But
Mhm.
always go into this thing with what am I trying to get out of that exercise, right? First of all,
Mhm.
if you're trying to make yourself go crazy by tracking every single penny, and let's say you're married to somebody who doesn't care if where they spend
And
$100, you're going to cause a lot of confusion, unnecessary turmoil in your relationship. I've done that. Trust me. I know what that feels like. Wait, I think we just lost
opposites
Brooke.
do attract.
I think I think we lost you there, Brooke. Can you repeat that?
Oh, yeah. Financial opposites attract, which is a real thing, by the way.
They attract. They do attract, right? So if you're somebody like my wife is, she grew up worrying about every single penny because of whatever upbringing she had. I didn't even have the penny that I just spent. That's how I lived my life. So for us to match, the matching had to happen in a way that's sustainable, right?
Yeah.
For I had to come to her level, she had to come to my level, and the middle ground works. It perfectly works. That's what I want you to do. So budgeting is a very important concept, but if you're budgeting your time, for the time, I highly, highly, highly recommend for next 1 week in 15 minutes increment, track every single hour of your life. It's painful. It's painful, but just for 1 week. And then the week after, I'm happy to look at that diary and show you a mirror that's going to tell you whether you're wasting your life or you're using your life. That's all simple. But you don't need me to tell you that. Once you look at that chart, I would say 80% of us are not using our time to do things that add value in our life. I'm not saying it
Mhm.
has to be money only. It could be anything. It
It can be health.
could be health. It could be food. It could be decompression. It could be meditation, whatever it is. When we say people don't have time to exercise, you will see what you're doing with your life. And you realize by looking at that chart saying, I don't prioritize exercise. It's not like I don't have time for exercise. Now
Mhm.
that now that empowers you, right? Because
Yes.
before you thought you never had time to do some things. Now you're saying, well, I'm doing this. I'm sleeping for 12 hours a day. Do I need to? Maybe I can shave off half an hour from there. I'm not saying go sleep 8 hours. If you're sleeping 12 hour, more power to you, because I can't sleep for 12 hours. I want to, but I can't. But you can shave half an hour from there. Take that half an hour, do something that you thought you never had time for.
Mhm.
That budgeting, I think, is way more productive. And most
Mhm.
financial gurus don't talk about that, because that's a
Mhm.
hard stuff, right? That's working on yourself. Numbers are easy. Cutting down coffee is easy. I mean, it's hard, but it's easy because you can take it off. You may have headache for 3 days. You're drinking, or you can drink crappy coffee. That's easy, right? But changing who you are and how you use your time, that requires real effort. So
It does.
we as this group, I mean, Brooke and I, more so me, I want you to do things that are harder to do, but only if that's pushing you forward in life. I personally don't think, no matter who you are, tracking finances at a penny level is going to make any difference in your life.
Mhm.
It may give you initial comfort to know where every penny is going,
And if
but
you
is
need
it
the
adding?
baseline safety, do it for a day and then leave it.
Then leave it. But consistently tracking it, what value are you adding in your life? And if it is, continue doing it. But I would love to challenge you. Let me know if somebody is doing that. Let me know, because I want to talk to that person of how is that value being added. And I love to be proven wrong. I'm not saying I'm right all the time. I'm not Mr. Right. But I have talked to enough people and enough investors, and I've seen my own personalities. The budgeting at penny level doesn't work on a sustainable basis for anybody. It may work for a day, for a week, for a month, but eventually it won't. So I just added the QR code here on the show, on the window here. I would love to. I'm very passionate about using your time well. Now, I'm not saying I am the best user of my time. I'm not. I suffer from the same thing. I track my time on a 15-minute increment on a routine basis. I'm not telling you to do something that I don't do, right? And sometimes I find things there. I'm like, oh, I'm literally wasting my time. I shouldn't be doing this. Watching YouTube shorts. That's how I figured out I'm spending a lot of time on YouTube shorts, probably 2, 3 hours a day. What value is it adding? It gives me happiness because I'm seeing some stupid thing that's giving me laugh, but I can smile outside of that. I mean, that's who I am. I laugh at crazy things to begin with. So why do I need YouTube shorts to do that? So I'm sorry if it's sounding like a lecture. It's not a lecture. It never is intended to be a lecture. But budgeting, I would say, is that just look at budgeting differently. You're budgeting different things. Budgeting finance is important because you need to know where your money is coming and how is it going. But the more important thing is the time, because
Mhm.
nobody can give it back to you. I'm so
Absolutely
sorry.
not. And it's just taking an audit of where you spend it and then slowly saying, this 30 minutes, this half an hour, like you said, this hour, this 2 hours, I can use it differently. And I did that recently. I thought I didn't have time to read a series, a type of book that I really, really wanted to read. And turns out I did. But I just had to
Everybody
think
does.
about where it fit into my life.
You know what? Somebody told me recently, and it's very true. I think it's a cliched statement. Bill Gates and Sake Jain has same number of hours.
Correct.
The difference is how we use those hours. And I'm putting myself in the same bucket, right? We need to figure out how are people who are more successful than whoever your role model is, somebody you know somebody in your life who's more successful than you. Chances are, because there's always going to be somebody more successful. It doesn't have to be financially. It could be relationship wise. It could be health wise. It could be whatever. Pick a vector in your life. Chances are they're using their time differently than yours. Not money, not resources. They're using their time differently. And once you have that distinction, I think your relationship with time is going to change. And once your relationship with time changes, everything in, like, I can give you a written guarantee, everything in your life is going to see exponential growth. May not be easy growth, but it's going to grow exponentially because now you're taking care of the time, right? Because when you're taking care of the time, you're removing things that are not adding value. It could be relationships, toxic people, toxic thoughts, toxic emotions. Now you're saying this thing has been bothering me for 5 years and I've been living with it. Well, it's taking 8 hours of my life. I don't want it. I'm done. At least that'll give you that urgency of action. So I would love to for you guys to budget your time. Big proponent of that. Um, Money, I think you know what to do with your money. I can tell you what to do with your money. I think you should do what you think is necessary, only to an extent that gives you value,
Mhm.
not an inch more than that, right? For the time, if you can do microsecond, do microseconds. If you can do seconds, you can do seconds. Whatever you feel comfortable. Start with 15-minute interval. They're easier to track in your head. It's always easy to track 15-minute interval. I would say recommend that. Do it for a week, no more than a week, and do an audit with somebody who's more objective than you by your time.
Mhm.
Like, pick me, pick Brooke, pick whoever you want to pick.
But
It
he
could be
really
your
wants
friend.
you to book a meeting with him. So book a meeting with him and he's going to tell you his examples, his stories of doing this. And
Yeah,
he's going to humble himself and show you too where he's had to do this on himself. And it's not
definitely.
easy to do. And even about the YouTube shorts, it's not easy to admit that. And coming into a space where somebody's been through, walked through it, and is still doing it day to day is going to be so helpful when you take your first baby steps towards this, because it is going to be very vulnerable. And that's why I think the meeting with you is so important.
I would love to. And if you don't choose to have a meeting with, don't worry about it. Find somebody, find somebody to do the auditing with you. Don't do the auditing yourself. Track yourself, but don't do the audit yourself. You're going to create, I think all of us are smart enough to tell ourselves rational lies. I did this because I make so much money. So why don't I watch 2 hours of Netflix every night? I don't want you to go through that thinking at all. I want somebody to say, Saket, you say you don't have time. You're watching 2 hours on Netflix every single day for 7 days. Can you limit that time to 1.5 hours and go work out, go walk, go talk to your wife, go talk to your husband, go talk to your kids, go play with them. We're not saying anything that you're doing wrong or right. So the problem with self audit is you try to be defensive.
Mhm.
You don't want to be defensive. You don't
Yeah.
want, because it's not helping you. So let somebody else tell you, hey, you know what? I think you may want to look at that pattern. And again, if you don't want to change that, perfectly fine. But now knowingly, you don't want to change it. So you can't blame somebody else for the consequence anymore, right?
Mhm.
All right.
I
I think
love
this
that.
is.
And being
I think
being
we've talked a lot.
cognizant of time. We're on our last 60 seconds before your hard stop. So is there anything you
Right.
want to say before we are cognizant of your time and let you go?
No, I think it's just really budget things that are track things that are necessary to track. Don't track unnecessary things in life.
And be
That's really
honest with
what the
yourself.
thing is.
Don't
Be
lie to
honest with yourself.
yourself.
Yeah.
That's the
All right.
big
I'm
one. Well,
sorry.
I
I
had fun
have to
with
jump.
this. This took a good
I
direction.
I would have loved to talk to you more about it because we always do, but we'll come back next week.
And we'll come back and we'll expand on this. And I'm going to try the exercise. So we're going to
I
see what
would
I
love
find.
that, Brooke. There you go.
We're going to do an in-person session next week where we're going to see what some of Brooke's crazy habits are.
Let's do that.
Let's
Awesome.
do it.
Well, thank you
Okay.
again,
Well, thank you
everybody.
so much.